Hey, do you have to do a double materiality analysis? In this podcast episode, I'm going to talk to Samuil from Cyclos Future, who's an absolute expert in the topic. So if you are interested in that, definitely check out this episode. Welcome, Samuel, and thank you so much for taking the time. You're the managing director of Cyclos Future. Can you tell us a little bit about what yourself and how did you get in your current position?
Hello, Daniel. Thank you for having me here. And yes, I can say a couple of words about myself and Cyclos Future. Actually, my name is pronounced Samuil Simeonov. Originally, I come from Bulgaria. I have been here for like the last 25 years. And now I live in Ostwestfalen, a German
Mhm.
region, somewhere in the middle of the country. I have three adorable daughters, and uh,
Mm.
have been dealing with the topic of sustainability for the last 20 years, maybe from different angles, from an university perspective. Then uh, I was at a commercial bank for a couple of months and then switched to a foundation. And since 2016, I work with Cyclos Future. Cyclos Future is
Mhm.
well, we can say a small consultancy company in Osnabrück, also near Bielefeld, not very known destination. And what we actually do and why we do it is because we think that something should change. We are not idealists in the very sense of the word, but we think that as a society and as an economy, we have to change something. So we help companies to understand their own sustainability, because we'll see later in our conversation, there are many matters, many topics and subtopics, and we help them to make sustainability concrete, specific to their company, and then make the most out of it in terms of strategy building and most recently, sustainability reporting.
Okay, very cool vision. You said that you already work in sustainability for the past 20 years. How did that start? How did you get the interest to be like, okay, I want to like work in sustainability already 20 years ago?
Well, actually, it was a bit by chance and a bit by education, because my mother, who is very, I don't know, how should I say, she's a worker in a textile, was a worker in a textile company. She taught me that this was one of the things that I kept remembering all the time. Everybody is a person. So something like Article
Hmm.
1 of the German Constitution, without knowing. And so this was part of my growing old process. And then this was the educational aspect. And then when I came to Germany, I started studying political science, and my major was international relations. So there was this professor who was asking the question of why should companies like Siemens um,
Hmm.
have a similar conduct in countries with a lower regulation? Or should Siemens behave differently in Brazil, for example, where the socio-ecological regulation is not as high as the German one? Or would they behave differently because they can use this gap in the standards? So he had some money for some projects, and that's where I also started to work as an assistant, and one thing led to another, and here am I sitting and talking to you.
Mm. Yeah, that's super interesting to hear that you had it like already from your backstory and then somehow you found your way into sustainability. And right now at Cyclos, what does your day to day look like? Like what sustainability challenges are you faced with?
Well, you can imagine that I somehow divide it into prior to Corona, before Corona, and
Hmm.
after Corona. After Corona, we have the everybody is concerned about the coming regulation. So I think now it's like maybe 80% of the time we're dealing with companies who are just starting to deal with the topic. Interestingly, after Corona, it is more high level people that we're talking to. And there's
Hmm.
also a shift from the marketing or communicational part of the company to the financial part of the company. And so we're talking to those people, and they first try to sketch something like a roadmap because they have lots of things to do. And one of the first things, and everybody knows it, well, not everybody, but lots of people know it by now, is to do, for example, a materiality assessment. So showing
Hmm.
them where their road might go through. And then if they want to, then we embark on a common journey along the different stages that are to do. It's not like a thing that you can choose to do. You can choose the ambition level maybe, but there are
Hmm.
certain homeworks to do, and that's what we are doing for the last, I think, 2 years. This is our day-to-day work. So calling to people, having workshops with them, trying to spread the word also in the company, doing lots of also of workshops or some kind of events to raise awareness. Why is it important? Why should companies start today, even today at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and stuff like this?
Hmm. Okay, that's very great. Before we dive more into the topic, can you maybe explain quite simply what is the double materiality analysis? So just to make sure that everybody is on the same page.
Okay, so on the one hand, one picture that I like to use is you imagine like a funnel, and you have lots of things that you associate with sustainability, the so-called sustainability matters. And
Hmm.
according to the standards we'll be talking about, there are more than 100 such
Hmm.
matters, and you throw them in this funnel, and according to certain specifications that you did that you made so that this funnel functions, a couple of them go out at the bottom, and those are your
Hmm.
material topics. The second perspective is the one that maybe most people think about, is this matrix with the two
Hmm.
axes, where you have the two perspectives of the double materiality analysis, where you say, okay, on the one hand, what is my positive or negative contribution to the planet, to the market, and to people, to human rights? And on the one hand, what are my chances, opportunities, and risks along the whole value chain coming from such impacts? But the funnel, I think this funnel picture for me, when I do some presentations in companies, I think most of the people can imagine it because it's very day to day thing. And yes, I would leave it to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think that the funnel makes a lot of sense because at the end there are like a lot of topics that relate or that are important to the CSRD, and to like figure out which of the topics are actually important, you then use some sort of funnel that you can like figure out what are the important topics that are material to the company. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And also the second point that you mentioned with the metrics, I also think that that is something that a lot of companies now have seen, and they know that this is one of the outputs they have to create. Maybe to go one step before that even, Can you explain why this process is so important for companies and why this is an essential step to do?
Uh, Um, yes, I think I can, and I would like to, because even in pre-corona times, we were doing double materiality assessments. Cyclos Future, and a lot of other companies that were existing at the time, not as thoroughly as we do it now because of the regulation
Hmm.
requirements. But the idea is that if there is this common sense that you should focus the most of your time on the most significant activities, even as a person, to be more successful. So it's the same if we translate it to company entrepreneurial behavior, you name it. If you deal with non-significant things and distract your attention from the most significant topics, you'll not be successful. So this is the common sense of a part of the whole thing, and I think that everybody would agree in the first place. So what you do along this analysis is that you strategically you can define a couple of issues, and here we come to this double aspect that affect you either directly, for example, some raw materials are getting more expensive, so we have to pay more. So there's a risk that you don't get them in the future. Yesterday, I heard about the fact that, for example, beer, coffee, and I forgot the third one, the third raw material would be in I think in the course of the next 20 years would be like 40% less on the market. So the prices will be higher. And if you're a producer, you cannot produce. So this is the one thing that you can be affected from.
Hmm.
And the other one is if you treat bad your environment, your people, then it comes back as a boomerang to you. So there's a lot of sense to see which are those topics that affect you the most and start dealing with.
Yeah, I also completely agree that double materiality is often seen as a compliance topic with something that you have to do. But actually, if you do it truly, then there's a lot to gain from it, a lot of insights that are important, and also like many things that ha- can be of strategic value.
This is
I would
exactly
like to.
it's a very good point. Sorry for interrupting. This is exactly what the I think the very important task of our sector is, like consultants and people that help companies go through this, to find the perfect balance between this compliance part. Okay, I have to do it for my reporting, but also how can I use it strategically? And that's why it's a very good point to see. Okay, pre-corona times, I would do it only for myself, and some people would do that for their GRI reporting, but not so thoroughly and not so well documented as we have to do it now. But don't use it only as a ticking box exercise. Then it is only a lot of work with, well, a little gain, obviously, but well, maybe lots of lost potential.
Mhm. Yeah. I would like to pick your brain a little bit because you said that you already like support companies with the materiality analysis even before Corona and especially now. Can you tell us a little bit about what are the challenges that companies are facing? What are the issues that you see in the market and that most companies are struggling with and that you then maybe even can help with?
I would focus on the post-corona time because now it's a different
Mhm.
thing. I can assure you, in pre-corona times, if I pronounce the word also in German, Wesentlichkeitsanalyse, everybody would like not understand you. And now we have do-it-yourself workshops taking like 8 hours, and we don't market them in a different way. We just say Wesentlichkeitsanalyse, materiality analysis, and people know what it is and they come. So we have a very
Mhm.
different game now. So the challenges now are, I think, exactly or correspond to those two things I would ideally try to achieve with one analysis. So I want to be compliant, and there's lots of uncertainty, which is decreasing. At least in my experience, from my point of view, is decreasing, but it's still very high. Of what is a compliant materiality analysis, and how do I do it in the end so that the respective auditing company um, accept it? And at the same time, how
Mhm.
do I use with the results for my processes? How do I connect the dots in the company after the analysis, and how do I use it strategically? So these two questions lead to challenges like, okay, how much should we invest in the whole process, and what do we get from it if it's only a ticking box exercise, and how can we be sure that it's compliant, as I already said, and maybe another question is, why or how long should it take? Because if you go
Mhm.
to if you ask me, I will tell you a number, maybe like a
Mhm.
span. And if you ask other people, I ask other people, and they tell me a similar span, which is good for me because then we align, so we have a similar understanding. But as time gets less, with regard to 2026, the year, the relevant year
Mhm.
for most companies, most German and EU companies, there's this idea of using maybe also AI to make it very, very fast because they don't have time, and it looks a bit more efficient, a bit cheaper for the company in terms of financial resources, maybe a bit more precise. So that's are the challenges, how to decide which way to go, because there are different ways to perform a compliant assessment.
Mhm. Yeah, you just mentioned a lot of challenges that come up for companies. Maybe let's dive into the first one a little bit more. You said that companies like have to first figure out what they actually have to do, and then they need to like get somehow to the point that they can make a compliant analysis that then can also be approved by an auditor. What are recommendations that you would give to companies to like achieve that? Or because I feel like a lot of companies, they are standing in front of this of all those challenges that you just mentioned, and they don't know where to start. So what is some guidance that you could give to them, like how to approach the topic?
Mhm. So this is a kind of meta guidance, which I myself find very useful, and we use it sometimes when we have workshops with companies. These are more like questions, so that the companies have to decide on their own which is the best way. So we have some borders to the left and to the right, which which stand for compliance. Okay, but but I have some
Mhm.
flexibility as a company. For some representatives, company representatives, this is too much flexibility, so they would like to have like a checklist. But this flexibility gives me the opportunity as a company to choose my way, and this would be the first thing to say. Well, look at your company and decide what the ambition level is. It is not a bad thing to to regard the materiality assessment only as a compliance exercise. Maybe you lose some potential because you have to invest time, people, money on this. So maybe you lose some potential, but it's not like a bad thing to do. You don't have to feel bad about this, but you have to be clear about this, that it's only a compliance ambition level. If you want to take more out of the analysis, you maybe should invest more here and there, and go beyond the mere shell language in the standards, just because you look at yourself and decide that this is the way you wanted to do it. It's a little bit like doing business. Do you look so much at the competitors and decide what to do, or do you look at yourself and say, okay, I have my vision, and if the market doesn't accept me, maybe I shouldn't do business, but I would like to do it like this. So the ambition level is the first thing, and of course I should look at some regulations, and not only the ESRS, but also maybe I'm operating on different continents, and I have different standards to bear in mind. So the ambition level is also determined also by market and by compliance frameworks, obviously. The second thing is to look at what do we have already done in the company. Do we have a recent GRI materiality assessment, or another one? And to answer very honestly, should it be upgraded or completely updated? Because in pre-corona times, many companies that were doing GRI reporting would not adhere so much to the guidance on GRI, because most of the reports were not audited. So their
Mm-hmm.
analysis is said to be operable. It's said to be possible to upgrade and to reach ESRS, how should we say, maturity. But if the ground is not well built, is ill built, maybe even, it's better maybe to say, okay, we start from scratch. We have the experience, we have a team maybe of people, but this is a new way of seeing the analysis. The third thing is to decide what, according also to the ambition level and to what I have in the company by now, what am I willing to invest in people, in knowledge? Do I buy external knowledge? Do I want to increase knowledge in my company? Maybe this knowledge transfer would require some external help in the beginning, but then the external help would decrease in course of time. What am I willing to invest in time? So different kind of capitals, not only like this external capital figures that are not as high as the people figures that I actually need to make a good analysis that also involves more than a couple of people, especially in companies that are operating on various sites or in different countries. And maybe the last, more important thing, there are lots of them, would be the culture. So there are companies, we were talking about such things when we offer things. Actually, we always offer scenarios and like menus at
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's, and let companies choose what is the scenario, the menu that most applies to them. So we have very ambitious companies that tell us very honestly, we don't have a workshop culture here. So I would say, okay, so we don't do too many workshops because we don't want to go against culture, only because workshops should be good. So look at your company and how it has dealt with similar processes. For example, with some digitalization processes where many departments are involved. How is the leadership involved in such processes? Is the leadership, when it is present in the workshop, is it stifling the discussion, or is it good for the discussion? And if it's the
Mm-hmm.
latter, I would invite them. And if it's the former, I would avoid them. So look at the ambition level, the first, the second one, what you already have in the state of art in the company, the resources, and the culture, and then you get your design, which most probably would suit exactly your abilities, your preferences, and maybe this is kind of a way to start.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Thank you for that. Before you touched on the topic of strategy, could you maybe paint us a little bit the bigger picture of the double materiality analysis and how this affects the strategy? I know that we already touched on this a couple of times throughout our conversation, but maybe you could just like briefly explain again the relation between double materiality analysis and the strategy ongoing.
Um, I think that many companies we are talking to do not have a real strategy at all, like written down.
Mhm.
Many family owned companies have some kind of strategy, but when we always ask people, do you have an explicit strategy somewhere? Many of them do not have it. But even if they do, most of the time it is focused. If we think, about the value chain, it is more focused on the company itself and on some very salient, like very explicit issues that sometimes come from beyond the borders of the company. For example, if it's somehow a company working with raw materials, they will obviously look at their suppliers in maybe even in their
Mm.
strategy, but they would not go back back to the very roots, maybe where the raw materials come from, or close the loop in terms of circular economy. So I think this materiality analysis gives a great opportunity, um, at least the way we do it, because as I said, there are different approaches to that are compliant. So how we do it in the end, we give the company the opportunity to see its value chain from a hotspot perspective. And so if you have a sustainability strategy and you have a goal to reduce your emissions um, in the first and second scope, and your biggest pain is in the third scope, especially in the resources part, so way away from you, but still you cannot do without resources, then you obviously set the wrong goal maybe. And if you would like to adjust to that and be competitive, because I think it's not a it's not like a thing of I would like to look nice to the outer world. If you do it properly, the materiality analysis is like a mirror. It's mirroring your business
Mhm.
model, and so you might decide to postpone a couple of measures in the short term because you have other priorities. We know now we have geopolitical and other issues that companies have to deal with, obviously, okay. But in the middle and in the long run, you should not ignore it. So if you do it only for the sake of reporting in the first year, it's okay. It's legitimate. It's legal. It's okay. It's not against law. But if you ignore it in the middle run, I think it's going to be detrimental to your success because those hotspots are showing you where to act. And actually, the ESRS want you also to describe exactly those connections, how
Mhm.
those hotspots um, impact your business model, your strategy, and does, for example, the advisory board of the company know about that at all? Things that should be, if we're talking like this, they seem common sense, but they are not. They're, I would say, they are not very well. How should I say? Very common in lots of companies. So let me put it like this.
Yeah. Perfect. There was already like a lot of good advice. Do you have any other tips or tricks or maybe materials that you want to share with the listeners? That where you just feel like, oh, this could also be helpful, or I mean, we already touched on plenty of points, but maybe there's something else where you like. where you would like to share that?
Maybe two things. If we in the end ask one thing that I would recommend, I will save the one for later. One thing is this idea of I already touched upon that, is to search for the perfect balance between speed and use
Mhm.
of artificial intelligence and learning. Because in the middle run, if we want to change something, I'm on the strategical part of the implications. We need many employees. I would not say like 100%, but maybe we need like 50 to 70% of the employees to at least to not to be against certain goals and measures that would not be so popular in the
Mhm.
future, that would go maybe against the financial goals of the company. So those people have to understand why, for example, biodiversity is a material topic. Why do we have such a goal? Why do we have such actions? Why do we have to get those numbers? Why should I report on them? It's a new task, and I have lots of things to do. So I think that this learning takes time. So please don't get too tempted to do it like fast. And learning is always taking time. So look for the balance between speed, which is okay, we don't have too much time, but also look how to build a fundament of knowledge, technical knowledge, but also like practical knowledge, so that people can roll out the implications of your strategic decisions. That would be one thing that I now am observing, that many people are tempted to push a button and have a materiality analysis
Mhm.
assessment.
Yeah. Okay. Understand. If and you had a second thing that you wanted to
The
mention,
second one
or?
would be, it should not be perfect. It's a process. It's
Mhm.
also called a materiality process. So there are a couple of regulatory uh, um, points that leave us some space for improvement. For example, some data on the value chain could be from secondary sources, from studies, also AI generated. So in the end, I should not strive to have a like perfect analysis from the first time, and I should not have maybe the fear in my head that I should update it every year, because if I build it in the first year to a very good extent, it's not going to be and if I understand it, it's not going to be such an exhausting an exercise to do it once again, to update it, upgrade it a bit from year to year. So don't strive for the 100%, but don't let it to be like 50-50. Maybe this is also another message, which also bears in mind this compliance aspect.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I also feel that materiality analysis is more like a breathing thing, like it changes and develops over time, and one can still like improve on the different things later on. But yeah, as long as it like is developed in towards the right direction, I think that's already a very good step. Uh, yeah, forward. I have one last question that I would like to ask you. If like someone listens to the episode right now and tomorrow is talking to their colleagues about the double materiality and about the conversation that they just heard, what is the one thing that they should take away from this conversation and they can share in their next meeting or conversation about this?
Yeah, I've already took that shot, but I think if they haven't started yet, they should start, because it looks it's in fact, if you go a bit to the bottom of the whole story, it's deeper and it takes time if you want to learn. So just start and try not to make it perfect, but to make it more. In German, we say unternehmensgerecht. It's like company
Mhm.
specific, company adjusted to the ambition level of your company, to the needs and like to the situation in which you're acting. But just start and try to find your way. There are many ways. uh, a couple of them are not compliant, but many of them are compliant. Just look at your look at the regulation, and talk to some people, find your way and start.
Yeah. I think that's a very good closing message to just start and like go ahead with all of those topics. Unless you have anything else that you want to mention or that might be important, this were all the questions I had for you.
No, I don't have anything. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to talk. I would be glad if I helped somebody in their way of like conceiving the topic and maybe acting from tomorrow on. And yeah, this is all I can say. Thank you very much for this opportunity here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. I hope I talk to you soon.
Bye.